Dr. Malchiodi, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm super excited about this session.
Yeah, you
And
guys are going to work today a little bit and give you a little bit more time to work. I think it'll be fun, So, and also back to the nature-based kind of theme, but this time really moving towards resilience, because we've moved through a lot of regulation and all these other topics. But, this one is kind of interesting. And, I'm going with green here. You're going to see a lot of green on the slides. So we're going to work into that here. And I think some of you kind of have an idea what direction I'm going. So this is the first thing I wanted to bring up that's nature-based to me. I wanted to know who said rabbit, rabbit, rabbit today when you woke up. This was something I grew up with, and I don't know where it came from, but on the first of the month, every month, before you say anything to anyone else or say anything at all, you're supposed to say 3 rabbits. So rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. And I don't know how many of you did that. I have a lot of friends that do that. So I get a text in the morning. Did you say the 3 rabbits? It's supposed to be good luck for the whole month. And I guess it's interesting this year, it's the year of the rabbit in the Asian cultures. They have year of the, I think last year was year of the tiger, and they have year of the horse, year of the snake, year of the rat. So, in China, they celebrate that. But the other thing is, if you really want to make the good luck for the month, you say tabar, tabar, tabar before you go to sleep. That's the last thing. You can't say anything to anybody after that. And that gives you good luck for the month, even better good luck. I hope you realize tabar is rabbit backwards. so it always freaks me out if I don't say tabar. I wake up and think like, oh, is it after midnight? Because you have to say it in the day and it has to be the last thing you say. So just some nature-based folklore there. I don't know, growing up that this was something that everybody just said in the family, like say your 3 rabbits, tomorrow when it's the first of the day. So just wanted to share that. So again, we're going to go back to the nature theme and, back to how it restores and heals us. So I kind of want you to embody that in a way and think about that. Let that set with you. Maybe you've thought about this a little bit more over these 4 weeks about, your experience with nature. We haven't had a really bad winter. I mean, it's been, it's always kind of a little bit gray and kind of cloudy but we didn't have so much snow and ice. Knock on wood, we're not going to have much of that, I hope, but still time. But maybe you've been thinking a little bit about that. And what I want to go back to here is something that in the research makes nature really powerful, and it's trees and vegetation. I think I brought that up before. So many of us respond to that in positive ways for a lot of different reasons. And there, if you weren't here the last session, there's that owl that visits our neighborhood every time, every same time every year, comes back, and he's an expected visitor that shows up in trees and on telephone poles around the neighborhood. So this is a tree in Bernheim Forest. I don't know how many of you have been there, but that's not far from Louisville. It's, a little bit of not much of a drive down there. And that's a place that, well, it's often really crowded in the spring, because people want to get their dose of seeing the blooming things and all the trees. I mean, just a really nice forest to be able to go into and wander around in. We're lucky here that actually we have a lot of trees. If you think about desert climates, it's a whole different thing about trees. Sometimes trees are really cactuses or other kinds of those desert kinds of vegetation. Down south, you go to Florida, you've got palm trees. So maybe that's a tree too that you're familiar with if you go south for any kind of vacation or to get warmed up in the winter or on spring break. But we have really in this state, in the surrounding states in our area, we have such a canopy of trees. So we really, sometimes I think like we're really lucky with that we have that access to that because it's such a health-giving thing. So start to think tree here. I'm going to take you through a lot of slides where I want you to just keep focusing on that idea of the tree, because we're going to get into doing something with a tree as an image. I presented this one, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but there's just so much research about how humans respond to green. And of course, greenery comes about here in the spring again on all the trees that, will bloom again. But we still have trees outside, because we have some trees that just have perennial green leaves. But that's something that we really respond to for health and well-being. And they're not really sure why. Is it because trees emit things that are helpful to our systems as humans? Or is it some kind of imprint that humans have because they relate to trees and vegetation as something that we need for health in some way? Either to eat or, to be under, if it's hot, to be under the shade of a tree. All kinds of things seem to be related to that. So a lot of the research and nature-based work is around trees. So that kind of might be interesting for those of you, if you're in different disciplines, teaching from science or teaching, environment or, all kinds of things that are related, that this is a really interesting area to bring in and then combine it, with these kinds of art-based experiences, and especially the one that we're going to do today. So what I'm going to start with, in a few more slides here, try to connect with some kind of an image. I have an image on the screen here of a tree, but you might have a tree that you relate to, a kind of tree, let that kind of float around and start to think about that. Is there a kind of tree that you relate to, grew up with, have in your yard, something that's a favorite kind of tree for you? And I always say, this kind of, in a little bit in joking and jest, but a lot of people have a tree as a friend. A lot of people have a favorite tree. There might be a tree that you have in your neighborhood, or some tree that you're familiar with that you've watched grow over time, or there's something about it, because a lot of times we relate to nature that way, as something alive, and trees are alive. People talk to trees, people relate to them in different ways. So think about that a little bit. And I just wanted to share this one because I went on the internet and I was thinking, I just was looking for tree memes, and I remembered that Bob Ross, remember, he was the one who painted on public television, and he did all these landscapes and waterscapes, but there were a lot of trees. I mean, he really was into that and teaching people on those little broadcasts about how to paint different kinds of trees, how to paint, maple trees or oak trees, but also pine trees and all that kind of thing that you see in the forest, and putting that in landscapes. But he always would say, when he got to the trees, let's paint a happy little tree. So I thought that was really interesting. He really had kind of captured that thing about people have a lot of positive sensations and memories about trees. And I think that was, he had a lot of different reasons for being popular in the media, and people resonated with him and loved to learn what he had to teach. But they also, I think the topics that he picked, and he focused on nature a lot, really, gave us those positive feelings. And, his happy little tree, you could learn how to do that. He had techniques that people could learn and to be able to capture different kinds of trees. But he also said this, I think this really resonated with me, that there's nothing wrong with having a tree as a friend. So, and again, I think some of us might even think back to our childhoods or some kind of time in life when we did spend time in nature, and we may have talked to a tree, and a special tree became kind of a relationship, or just to be in the shade of that tree. So, that just let that sit with you and think about that a little bit, because I think he's right there. I think that was a really, he said a lot of really interesting things that I think made people feel safe and connected in some way. And I think picking up on this idea that maybe some people, that didn't feel close to somebody else, they may have felt close to nature in some way, and that we've had that experience too. So let that one kind of sit with you. Now I want to get into, just for a couple slides here before we get started with trying something. This is a really interesting area of research. It actually comes out of Japan, and there are researchers in the US that are thinking about this. And this is one of the areas, forest bathing, that's produced the most research in nature-based work. And it's basically taking a walk in nature. But it started out in Japan way back in the 1950s. And I think I didn't read too far into some of the books. There's a lot of books on it. But my impression is it started because, after the war, a lot of Japanese were suffering. They were traumatized, because their country was bombed. It was, very serious situation and a long recovery process. So this idea of just calming down through walking through the woods, and it even has a name, Shinrin Yoku, which is translated in Japanese to forest bath. So it was a practice of walking through whatever forest or vegetation that was available to bathe in the atmosphere of that forest. So then, like in the 1980s, this is when the research started up, and people were starting to research and discover why exactly taking walks in the forest gave a lot of different health benefits, because we're hearing that people just felt better after they did it. But what was really going on with their mind and body was something that researchers got quite interested in. And these researchers, a lot of them started out in Japan, and eventually the United States and other parts of the world, Europe, started researching forest bathing. And I think the next one here, I have a little film for you. Yeah, it's just a short film that a group in the United States put together because they're doing this research. They call it forest therapy, but they talk about forest bathing and where that came from. And again, why research this, but based on how well people felt after just walking in a forest. So there's a little bit of sound here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. It's just music. I'm going to stop there and go on to the next slide, but I just wanted to say this is a tree in our neighborhood. Some of you know about Bellarmine University, and there is just one big, huge tree in an area where they have a little bit of like gardening going on. I think sometimes they have students do some gardening, and they have a little orchard there. It's near one of the kind of psychiatric hospitals in Louisville, which is Our Lady of Peace. It's just this gorgeous tree that I have taken several pictures of that, for me is kind of like, I don't know, I really relate to this tree. I don't even know what kind of tree it is actually, but it's a wonderful tree that goes through the life cycle of a tree every year. So what I wanted to say too is, when I put these slides together, they had all these different quotes and information from their website, this group that does the forest therapy. I've strategically put some music in there that had bird sounds. I don't know if you remember, I said that before about bird sounds are one of the most effective sound that we hear in nature to help us calm down and feel better in our body. So, birds, we love to look at birds and see birds, feed birds, but they have a really important mental health function for us too, and hearing birds like this. And, so I gave you that in the background just so, that would be a little bit, drive home that point about how those sounds are really regulating for us. So here's just this summary. I'm not going to go through all these things, but walk among the trees, again, start to take this in if you have some memory about trees. Reduces blood pressure. It's all kinds of things that reduce stress and improves mood. These are all the things that they've found in the research. And again, it improves immune system. They're not even really sure how that happens. Is it the exercise or is it what we breathe in? Because when you're among trees in a forest, you're getting a different level of exposure to what those trees emit. It also accelerates recovery from illness and injury. I thought that was fascinating. So, and then reduces stress, but it helps us kind of develop our own strength and resilience in, addressing things that come along. So, I think this is just so important along the lifespan. I mean, this is, we're thinking about children and teens. But what about older people? Really need this exposure to this as well. We all do throughout the lifespan. Just some really strong research on trees. So start thinking about some characteristics of your tree. I just want to give you a couple other things here to think about. And I always talk about exteroception, the senses around us, the sights, the smells, the taste, the touching, what's the texture, And again, I'm going to throw in this idea of movement just to give you an idea if we were looking at, all together in a room where we could move, what might that be like when you're talking about a tree? And actually, this is a little drawing of a movement of kind of like grow like a tree. So doing that movement, but maybe holding two markers in your hand, a big piece of paper, and feeling that movement might be a good thing to start with some children to be able to move and feel like what it is to grow up like a tree. But I want to show you this therapist here who was in one of our classes kind of doing this movement here. She's just doing that movement. She's even crossing over. So she's thinking about that tree growth and how, a tree grows up, grows taller, and makes that movement. So we were experimenting with that kind of sensory integration. Now, I didn't think of this. This came from way back in the 50s. There were some educators, art educators, who started to think about what might we do with children with bilateral movement, and then put that to drawing on big pieces of paper. And I just want to mention the person's name because I always like to reference people. Her name's Florence Kane. She's long gone, and we're hoping her book comes back into print because it seems like she was a really interesting person that developed a lot of things with movement and drawing and sound and listening to music while, children were drawing. Really ahead of her time. But that's where we started to get this idea when we heard about this, and people have used this in their, in their work from children all the way up through adults with her movement of grow like a tree. So it helped with all those different slides with a lot of different imagery and a lot of different things, all the way from science to like, how do I feel about trees? What's my kind of internal experience? That's what I want you to think about right now, because you'll each have a different idea about that. You've had all these different life experiences. And I hope you brought with you, you got that handout, right, Wendy? They got that handout? They're supposed to open that email with that handout. Are you there, Wendy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
I actually sent it out this time.
So I'm going to show you a few things here, but I hope you all have a paper bag. If you don't, I have a workaround for that, but lunch bag. And I want to just share something. I get so excited about finding different kinds of lunch bags, and Walmart is my source, of course. And they have what they call the giant lunch bag. So it's even bigger than the regular small one that we're all kind of used to. So you can see they're a lot different. So I'm just so excited about this. But you can have a grocery bag, gift bag. It doesn't matter what kind of bag, just as long, it'll be fun for you to work with that bag today, just to get an idea. Because I think what I want to say first is here, working with something multisensory, and it's going to be, around positivity and resilience in some way. I think it's really important to make things three-dimensional at that point if we can. So that's kind of going to be our goal here. And I want to give you just a little bit of background on this first. And where I started to work with this idea is quite a long time ago. When I first started to work with military resiliency programs. I don't know, somebody's got their mic on. Is that Laura? Hi, Laura. Anyway, it started about back in 2008, and I started working with children in these resiliency programs, but it quickly became something where the military, and first it was Navy SEALs, and then it became also the Army, these programs where they would bring back people from either combat situations or overseas, back together as a family. So it started to become a family kind of thing to work with this idea that I'm going to share with you here in a second. And these are two examples here. The one on the far right is actually a paper bag. It turned into a tree. And if you don't have that paper bag today, I have a little film I'll show you a little bit later, or maybe while you're working, that shows another way to go about this on a flat surface. So there's a trick to that. But I just want to highlight that because this has been one of the things that now it's since 2008. It's been what, more than, gosh, I can't even do my math, 15 years, something like that, 17 years of going on this year. No, 15 years. So, you know, it's been a really important thing to them. They've really adopted it as a way to work together as a family. So I'm going to give you a couple ideas here. And while we're getting started, if you have also some kind of base, like a paper plate, you might want to get that out, or you could have just a piece of cardboard or piece of, even a folder would work. It's a little bit lightweight, but I like the paper plates. You know, this again, you can get all this, you know, in the convenience store practically. So you can staple that if you have a stapler. If you have glue, it's going to take a little bit longer to get that on there, but you can see the bottom of that paper bag is fixed to that bottom here, which is that paper plate. So you can get started on that. This film doesn't show you that part, but I think it's important to start there. This person starts with, oops, gosh, my mouse is jumping all over the place today.
The paper bag tree, of course you're going to need a paper bag and also a pair of scissors. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take your pair of scissors and you want to cut a couple of strips across the length of it. So you're just going to go like that. Now I made a total of 8 cuts, but you can make more or less depending on your personal preference. And now basically what you want to do is you want to put this flat surface over here down, and then you want to fold this over to the side so that you have a nice crease on the other side. So there's a crease right here now. And then after that, you want to grab at the bottom with your fist. So I'm going to grab that right there and give it a little squeeze. Now this doesn't have to be perfect because that is not what we're going for, but you just want to crunch it up a little bit so that it looks like that. And once you do that, you want to give it a little twist, and at the same time I'm going to be pushing downwards at the table so that there's always a flat surface right there. Alright, so now you have.
So I just find with working with children, or even working with the family, that affixing it to the bottom of a base is really helpful. And then starting to do that second step where you can either cut. What I like to do is just rip. So you don't even have to have a scissors. Because a lot of times if I'm working with large groups, we have scissors to share. So I'll just tell people you can just rip pieces down without ripping them off. And those become what will twist there to make the branches. So you can do that scissor cut, or you can do the tearing. And I think she shows how she.
Something that looks like this. I know it looks really messy, but I promise it's going to look good at the very end. So now you want to take some of these frays here, the branches, and I'm just going to grab 2 of them, and you want to give it a little twirl with your fingers like that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It is fall, so, you know, the branches are a little wonky. And then go ahead and repeat the same thing with the remaining branches. And that that is how you make a tree from a paper bag. And you can make some origami leaves as well to glue them onto the tree, but I sort of like the tree bare, so I'm gonna leave it like that and have the leaves on the ground as
Okay, so your tree actually is not going to be bare. So here's another way to look at it, just step by step. So a lot of times they say to people too, it just depends. Like, do you like it kind of uncrumpled or crumpled? Because you can start out with just having everybody crumple that bag. It depends on how strong the bag is, because sometimes we get these lunch bags now and they're not as strong as they used to be. So to have them crumple it, twist that piece in the middle, I would say affix this to the bottom as soon as you can, because it makes it more stable. What I've used sometimes is just some tape, or you can use invisible tape to, once you get this trunk form, to hold that together, and then work with those strips to make branches. So here's one that I'm going to describe a little bit more that I just kind of put together really quickly today. And I'm going to give you some prompts to think about, or you can just have fun making a tree. But you can see I've started to put little things on there. Actually, I decided today to cut out some things and just tie them on the branches of this particular one that I was working on, kind of as a mock-up. So if you don't have, and I'll run that film after we get started here, the paper bag to work with and the paper plate as a base. There's another way to think about this that's pretty simple, with a flat surface if you want to do just two-dimensional. But if you can do three-dimensional, it's really, really fun. That one on the left is actually a military family, but it's a military family. It was working through a lot of issues, stress in the family. And this one was made with the mother and the child, as part of what was going on in the therapy sessions and the resiliency program. So they were working together on this. And I think that's really fun, especially with the larger bags, working together as a family. So what I want you to think about, as you're making that tree, I hope people are starting to do something with their paper bag if you brought one today. Thinking about that circle of capacity. It's like, we have all this capacity to be happy, hopefully to be compassionate, to be confident, to be playful, any number of things. But, a tree has roots too. So I found this little image here. I just want to tell you about it. It just reminds me of an ancestor, like a great grandmother. That I saw a picture of. And I think I found that kind of vintage little photo and I thought, oh, well, that's part of my roots. But your roots could be, any number of things that supported you and helped you grow in life. So that would contribute to your capacity too. So I'm kind of thinking two questions here. How are you branching out? What things, maybe are growing for you right now or where you'd like to grow? And how are you rooted? Because your roots and your support system hopefully exist in some way. And how has that helped you maybe with your capacity and particularly your resilience? So those are a couple questions to think about. Here's another little prompt here. Thinking about, and you can just pick from these. These are all optional. But, how's your tree trunk right now in terms of capacity? Is it feeling strong or sometimes it's not feeling so strong? What would help it kind of feel stronger? Thinking about maybe your trunk, as part of your lifespan. How are you rooted? What maybe you'd like to add or examine and think about, like, wow, I have connections with my friends, not just my family, but maybe my church, your neighborhood, your community, and maybe it's also nature. So anything that was a part of your roots could go there. And, again, how are you branching out? Maybe, what's in your branches that makes you happy that you want to put in there? Is there something you're proud of, that you want to share with others? So, thinking about how, when we're working with children on resilience, how we can bring out some of that kind of information that makes them feel like they have a greater capacity, that they have things that really contribute to their resilience. Any questions? Get the idea about the tree? Are we good? It's always hard to say, on a Zoom session. Okay, well, I'm going to give you about 10 minutes here. Maybe we'll go to quarter of the hour to work on this. At some point here in a few minutes, I'm going to show that film so you can see that. But I want you to get started here a little bit with this and just work on that. And if you have any questions, if you're driving in a car, I hope you're not doing this. So I hope you're sitting somewhere in a room. But you might have some questions or want to reach out and say something or that came to mind. Everybody's quiet. I'm assuming you're all working.
I had a question, Cathy.
Yeah.
So these reflection questions, are we supposed to put those on leaves? Or
Yeah.
are they just simply for reflection? I missed that part.
You could reflect on them, or you could make something to represent them. And I would just say whatever pops out to you.
And they'd be placed on the tree.
Mm-hmm. So I just had one solution here. I mean, you could do it with glue or tape or whatever, but I kind of got into the string today and using a little hole punch and putting a few things on there.
Okay.
Think about my roots. But I guess that's a good question, because this is just some things to think about. Now, when you're working with a group of children to think about, or teenagers, or even a family, if you get that opportunity, you might skew it more towards culture, cultural exploration, because trees have a history. What's your history? So you can just think of different themes. So these are just some questions, but I think it's probably really important you adapt it in some way to whatever's going on, with the children you're working with or the teenagers you're working with. I hope that makes sense. So we'll keep working until quarter of, but in a couple minutes here, I'm going to put on that film, because it'll give you another idea that if you don't want to have it be three-dimensional, there's a quick way to do it. It's pretty fun. That's just two-dimensional. I think three-dimensional is a lot more fun, but there's a simpler way. Okay, so I'm going to start to run this. I don't know quite what's going on because there's so many dark screens today. Very dysregulating. There's a lot of dark screens just with names. Are people exhausted? The month of February has started, and where did January go? And I'd love to see your faces, so I'd at least know, even if you're just sitting around, just relaxing for this time and just listening and taking it in. It's always helpful to see people. So this little film is so interesting because in 2008, I talked about this and kind of started with this idea. And I went on the internet and I found about 6 films from something I wrote, no reference to me, but that's fine. People started to get the idea and start to think about it, and I thought like, well, that's really interesting. And I found all these films that different people made about this idea of what they call a strength tree. And that's actually what we called it first when we were running the military groups. In their resiliency programming. So
hello, I hope you're well.
This will give you another
I just wanted to
idea.
quickly share an exercise with you that I found on a wonderful website called creativityintherapy.com. It's an exercise that anyone can do. It's suitable for anyone of any age. And you can do it together, you can do it on your own, and if you're a child, you can get an adult to help you. The exercise is called Tree of Strength. And it's useful to think about our strengths at the moment, as we may be struggling with all the changes that are happening day to day, and all the uncertainty, missing school. We're missing work friends. We must miss, being able to play with our friends. So it's all sorts of things that we may be missing. So it's about thinking about our strengths to help us cope when we're not really feeling that strong. So I'm going to share with you some of all the materials that you're going to be needing. So you'll need 2 A4 sheets of photocopy paper, as you can see there. You can use any art materials that you have at home, but I've just selected some coloured pencils and a Sharpie, but you can use anything you've got at home. You may have paints, you may have crayons, you may have chalks, you may have felt tip pens. You can use anything that you want. A glue stick, or tape if you've got tape. And more recently, I found out that toothpaste is quite a good glue. If you use it on the back, a little bit of toothpaste on the back of the paper.
I wonder if that's true in England. She's in England.
Quite a nice glue too. To start our tree of life, I've taken my hand and I've traced over it, as you can see, and I've even used my wrist to create the trunk. And you'll notice that I didn't finish off where my fingers are going to be. I've left those blank. And if you're younger, you can get an adult to help you trace over your hand. And then you can also add little tree trunks, because that's where we're going to be adding our leaves. And I have also drawn a whole sheet of leaves. They can be any size, any shape. It doesn't really matter, because you're going to be writing on them. And these are going to make up your tree. And I have been colouring my one in. I used my pencils, and I also used a bit of paint for the background, for the sky. I used some paint and I used some pencils for the grass. But you can use this tree and colour it in any way you want, and you can imagine in your mind yourself sitting under the tree or being around the tree. It could be one of the favourite trees that you've seen in a park, or it could remind you of something else, but just imagine yourself being near the tree. And I've coloured in the leaves too. I've used my crayons, but you can use anything you want to use to colour them in, and they can be any colour as well. They don't have to be green, they can be any colour, because it's your tree of strength. And then also what you do is, once you've coloured them in, if you're younger, you can get an adult to help you cut them out, but basically cut out all your leaves, every single one of them, because we're going to stick them on our tree of life. And we're going to add things to them. What I've done is I've written on mine some of the things that make me feel stronger, some of the things that remind me that I can cope and that I'm okay. I've got here, breathe. Breathe is a really important one, because it really reminds us to stay calm, and it helps our brains to think of how to become calm. So it's something that's really, really important. I really like music as well. I listen to a lot of music, and when I listen to music, it often helps me dance. I like doing a lot of dancing because it's exercise. And when I'm dancing, it often makes me laugh because I'm not very good at dancing. So it does a few things. And of course, I like art. And the other thing I've put here is ask for help, because sometimes when we're struggling, we forget to ask for help, because we feel like we should just be doing it. But asking for help can be a really, really useful strength, and it's something worth remembering. I like cooking. You may like eating. I don't know. It's all different for everybody. Tasting lovely, lovely, delicious food. And I've also got here kindness. You can see, because it's really important for us to remember how to be kind to ourselves when we're struggling, and to be kind to others, because everybody is in different situations. So kindness is really, really important. I've also put down here growing vegetables. More recently, I've been doing this, and if we don't have a garden, that's okay, because you can use any containers that you get your shopping in, because here's like a container that mushrooms come in. And what I did was I took some tomatoes from my fridge and I took the seeds out, dried them, and then I popped some soil in there, and the seeds started to grow. So we can grow our own vegetables. So that's something that you can do. And then once they're a little bit bigger, you can transport them to a larger container and watch them grow, either inside your house or in your garden. So that's really, really important as well. Nature. We may not all have our own private gardens, but we have windows that we can maybe look out of and maybe think about the birds that we can hear and listen to them. Note how many birds that we can hear. So that's the tree of life, or rather the tree of strength. And those are all my strengths that I need to help me cope when I don't feel like I'm so strong. I really look forward to seeing some of yours. You can even do this with your friends, or you could do this at home with another adult, and something that everybody can share, and you can all share your different strengths and different thoughts. But I'm really looking forward to seeing any, if you want to send them to me, and sharing your strengths with me.
I'm going to stop there, and because we need to kind of wind down a little bit, but I think she's this really terrific art therapist in the UK. I follow her on Instagram, and she just posts a lot of things that are just really lovely, lovely ideas. And you could tell kind of from her, just the way she's talking, she's so wonderful to listen to. I just think she's, I think the Instagram account is called Courageous Art Therapy. And I'm not sure if there's like a hyphen in there or a slash or something, but she's just gives a lot of really great information. I just think she shares so much. So, okay. So I'm going to jump out of here so that we can do a little bit of sharing, and I can see everybody, at least the people that are on screen. Everybody wants to be behind the dark wall today. See, Wendy's right out there. She's having a snack, doing her thing. Oh, are you going to share?
Always. I got to share before Dr. Evans does, because this will be great.
And we want to know what he's up to.
So I tried to be a little artistic with mine. My branches kept kind of like in my life, they just kept drooping. So do you have a recommendation on does anyone have a recommendation on how to get your branches not to droop?
Oh, see, that's what I was saying about the lunch bags over the years have gotten thinner. So now I'm more into the bigger bags, because a lot of times I'm working with a family, so we like to make the bigger tree because everybody's participating. But like the Trader Joe bag or the Kroger bag, I'm always stealing Kroger bags. Yeah. Like I'm putting them in my groceries in the plastic bag and taking like 3 Kroger bags. So I have them in my stash, but those are stronger. It's like even these giant ones like are a little bit better at Walmart. They're called giant lunch bags. They don't always have them, because I look, and these are a little better, don't droop as much, because sometimes you want to have like a lot of I call them like embellishments, like little trinkets and things like that your group can put on the tree, and those will weigh it down on these more flimsy bags. So now if you really get into this, you'll start to be like me. I'm always looking like, where am I and what stuff are they giving away, brown paper to make a tree, and how I'm checking it out. And if it's good, if I feel, because that's a good point. I mean, the lunch bags used to be a lot stronger, Yeah, I think most people don't use so many lunch bags anymore, maybe even for that reason, because
Right.
they don't hold much, right? So yeah. What's Jim up to?
Well, I actually had a brown paper bag today, so, and a plate.
Oh,
You're shocked. But so I did a tree, and this is a representative of a palm tree because I love the sunshine. But in this tree, I kind of put inside within the thinking of the roots and things. And Wendy introduced us with these red card memories this year of things, big moments in our lives and things like that. So inside the tree, I kind of cut pieces of the red cards and stuff that inside. So that's what this represents. So anyway, palm
Yeah.
tree, big picture, love sunshine, but also the memories that go into, thoughts, but that's it. So there
That's
you
a
go.
nice idea to put them on the inside, to kind of
Yeah.
think about that. Like, what do I want on the inside there? That you
Yes.
can either show and tell, or you can just have as, my own, my own thoughts, my own feelings. Yeah. There is a great adaptation right there.
Well, I can't even pick on that idea.
I know, we can't pick on you today at all.
I know you're all shocked. I actually have something real, but
What kind of bag did you had a bag that had handles, I think.
it was just a brown lunch bag that we had in
Yeah.
the kitchen back here. I went to
Yeah.
search, so yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I bet that was a little more substantial, than the lunch bags.
Yeah.
The reason I used to get the lunch bags for the military meetings is sometimes we'd have 50 children in the session, literally. We had helpers and things. I wasn't like overwhelmed with 50 children, but there's always like bulk, how to get bulk things, and and so we get the lunch bags.
Laura, I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah.
Yours
Laura.
looks thicker. Did you double yours up? I'm just picking on you because I can see yours.
Drop my phone on mine.
Yeah, it looks thicker.
Cool.
Did you double yours?
It's a McDonald's bag.
Oh, there's a secret. Yeah.
Okay.
I twisted it pretty tight though, so I don't know. Maybe that makes a difference.
Maybe that does make a difference.
Yeah.
Looks really nice. Good job.
Thank you. I didn't add any embellishments though. I did not get any to do that.
It's a work in progress. You don't have enough time.
Yes.
You really need about 30 minutes to really get into it, but at least you're getting the idea. Yeah. I'm gonna look at my gallery here and see what's happening. Debbie, what's going on at your place? You got something going there?
I do. I also use McDonald's bag because all my stuff is at school in my locker, in my cabinet. So I made do with McDonald's bag. I twisted it and I put some traits. My roots are strong. Let me put my glasses on so I can read what I wrote on my little leaves. Strong roots. I think I have a strong character. Strength in family. Very strong in faith. I think have a very positive attitude. Let's see. I'm helpful. I'm strong. I'm always happy. Caring. And let me tell you about my tree. This is a willow tree. My grandmother and grandfather had a weeping willow when I was growing up. And it was my favorite place to go. I would go under the branches and I would draw, color, play with my Barbies. And that was my safe, secret place. Not that I had anything that I would need to hide from, but it was my secret, enchanted little place. And I remember when my granddad would chop firewood, he would always leave bigger pieces, and I would make stools to sit on. And that was my favorite place to be when I was a kid. So that's my willow tree.
We have that in common. Yeah, well, the only tree that was in the yard for a long time was a willow tree. It was planted specially, by my father. And
Yeah.
from a little bit of distance from the house, but not too far. He had a big backyard. But yeah, we used to go and sit under there, just gather under there, and it just felt comforting. And it was such an unusual tree to us too, because there was no other tree in the neighborhood. I mean, people could buy them and plant them, but there was no other tree like that. So it's kind of magic.
It was.
Yeah.
It to me it was just such a magical little place. And I remember my mom, she was so creative, and we would get like I don't think they were called tea lights back in the 60s or 70s, but they're little itty bitty candles, and we would make like fairy lights, and we would build just stick furniture, and it would be our fairy places where a fairy would come.
Oh, there's a real tree memory there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did the same. I don't have a willow tree here, but I have apple grove and some fruit trees. And a few years ago, we had a big ice storm, and my grandchildren, well, my 19-year-old at the time was, I think, 7 or 8. And part of the tree was heavy. The ice was heavier for some reason, and it branched off, and we were going to cut it. And I said, no, leave it there. So we've got a little grove. We call it, it's our secret grove. And we have some wicker furniture and things. And of course, my grandkids are now 19, 14, and 13. But for the longest time, that was our secret garden. That's where we would go and do crafts and just have fun. We'd swim, and I would miss the kids, and they would be over in the grove eating snacks and just having fun. So that's
Yeah.
my tree stories.
Yeah, you got stories. It's good. So what's Sarah? What are you doing, Sarah? I don't know. I'm just calling on you because I'm just wondering what you're up to. Oh, there you go.
I was on the phone actually. And my husband's out of town, but anyways, I've been working on a tree though.
Oh, so you have a different base there. What did you use?
I just found something. I'm still at school. It's just it's like supposed to be a blob of paint. It's paper. I just tried to find a wide base, and then I used construction paper for my tree. But mine is an apple tree because I loved to climb trees when I was a little girl, and we had several apple trees. And there's a picture somewhere of me in a tree eating one of the apples, and I just distinctly remember that phase where I climbed trees all the time.
So brought up some memories too. I was just thinking too, okay, so here's like, remember we did last week with the words. So you could do that same kind of thing with this, like write some words, but then give lists of words put together, see what that comes together in a sentence. But what I usually like in a group is everybody sets out their tree when they've completed it. So it might be another session. And everybody does like what I call a gallery walk or a walkabout and looks at everybody's, but they give them words. So they look at their tree, and you really have to kind of coach the group. Like, okay, so if it's children or adolescents or families, like I always say, like, okay, think strength words, think resiliency words, because you're going to give words to each one of those trees and walk around. And I always tell them, like, write it on a piece of paper and turn it over so nobody else sees it. And then when everybody comes back to their tree, they turn over all those words. And they're so surprised. I mean, they're like, I didn't think about this, but I really like that word that somebody else gave me. Somebody else was thoughtful enough to put by their tree. So, with a little bit of coaching around that. And again, you can give people lists of words, and they can cut out words that they can put by the tree. And then they can make like their story from that. So they might make like, maybe several sentences or something. And then we share them in the group. People get up and share those, stories that come up. And they can add any words. I always say you can add any words you want to after you get those gift words, but you can also look at some of the words. If they don't make sense, then you don't have to use them. give them that option, because and sometimes people get the same word over and over again, then they start to laugh. They say, wow, I didn't think of this word, but I got it 3 times. Then they might just use it once. But I always tell them, you can throw out whatever you don't want and keep what you want. So that's another thing, if we're all in the same place, we could have done that with each other and just gifted each other with some words of strength or resilience or capacity or whatever we want to give to that tree. Hope that makes sense. This is another way to take it. Again, it's kind of like all that sensory stuff first. You've got the bag, you're stapling it, you're making the branches, you're moving up through, and now you're starting to perceive like, okay, I'm making this tree, I've got this tree going here, to bring it up into that kind of thought place and putting it together. You're going through all those senses up into the higher brain then at that point. And I always think that's really what all this has been about, the expressive arts, starting with all that sensory stuff and moving through into some kind of perception, getting some idea, and then being able to put that to language somehow. And storytelling would be, the nice outcome in most expressive arts therapy kinds of situations. So I think you kind of did that here in some ways, because there was so much storytelling that got triggered.
Could you have everybody just kind of hold up for those that didn't get to share?
Yeah.
I saw Greg held one up. I wanted to see, and if you did one, just kind of hold up so we can all take a view. I'd love to see it.
I'm gonna take a screenshot too.
Oh, look, fantastic. So yes.
Here we go. Get a screenshot. Did you do, Heather, did you do a 2-dimensional one? Did you try the hand tracing? Because I thought that was kind of cool the way she described it.
I didn't cut out my leaves, but I did trace my hand and I drew my leaves. Each branch has like family, friends, community, colleagues, and neighborhood I put on there. And then I just kind of put the leaves that corresponded with that.
I always like that idea when I see people like using their hand for the base. We always make the Thanksgiving turkey that way, but I thought that was really, it's important. There's something about that that says that's me, that's my hand, and then you create from that. Andrea, did you have one? You were holding up one? It was, I'm gonna put my thing on speaker view. Say something.
So I was just over my sketch notes for the session today. I went ahead my hand with my little words that make me, who I am, and then what I have in my toolbox to help me with the struggles. So I kind of have some of the notes that are from today, what we did in this tree.
That's the way my notebook looks too. It looks like that. I'm not kidding. It's like drawing and doodling and then words all in there. And I hope I learned something, but it's the way I keep my notebooks. Anyone else? Yeah, we hit the 5 o'clock mark here.
Well, thank you all so much. Wendy just jumped off because she's taking Addie to volleyball. So anyway, outstanding session as always, Dr. Malchiodi. We so appreciate you being part of our work and our family and our team here. So, and I love seeing all what you all did. So it's fantastic. I'll go ahead and put the evaluation in the chat.
501, you're in the clear.
Yes, yeah. So, and if you all need for us to hang on or stay around, Jamie and I will be here. And if you have questions about this or anything other KEDC grants or anything that we can help you with, please, we're here to help. You all know Wendy's commitment and our commitment to this work and you all. So thank you so much. And again, Dr. Malchiodi, awesome. So great seeing you and another fantastic session.
I just want to say if down the road, like all these things we did over the last 4 sessions, you adapt them or please let us know, let me know, because I love to hear like, how did it go? Or what did you come up with? A lot of people come up with some great variations. And I know last year I heard from a lot of people, they put together even PowerPoints or things like that for their classes, or they just started to do some of the work as their own practice to kind of like, oh, I really got into this myself. I'm going to just keep doing this because it makes me feel better, even though they introduced it in the classroom too. So all that, I really, because I think the thing about everything, y'all must be doing, with the larger grant is like the outcome, like where are people's I would say lived experience, you know, because everybody's different. So it's not like, you know, measuring like anything, but hearing what people do with it and what
Yeah,
they feel about it down the road.
Yeah, we've got the last time we were on, we hung on a little bit later and I've got notes. We definitely, if we can schedule a follow-up call and
Yeah.
talk about how we would capture that, because we want to see that and hear that from each of you as well. So absolutely. So we will
Yeah,
get
let me
together.
know about that, because that's the
Yeah.
thing. I think, yeah, I hear from some people, but I think it's pretty important to share all that with each other. It
Absolutely.
stimulates a lot of ideas and how it changes your perspective, because I
Yeah.
hope you do all this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
You got people